One. And we are recording with Jack Roth for episode 1070 on Thursday, January 26, 2023 at 4:07 p.m. Eastern Time. Author of Killing Kennedy, which I'll put in the description. It's a fantastic book, and I have read a lot of Kennedy books. I've actually interviewed Judith Ray Baker. A couple of the people you mentioned in there, I think Peter Dale Scott, I've interviewed him. Jefferson Morley, I've interviewed him a couple times. I don't know if you mentioned him, but I've had on Gerald Posner. He doesn't view it as a conspiracy. Actually, on November 22nd, I think 2020, I interviewed Jefferson Morley. He talked about James Jesus Angleton and kind of, without saying it, was like, yeah, CIA did it. And then I also interviewed Gerald Posner, who said that, it was Lee Harvey, just as a sort of, hey, I'm going to approach. That's when I was still just doe-eyed and like, I'm going to present the truth from both sides. And now 2.5 years later, as I was just telling you before we started, my soul has just blackened over. I'm just like, it's all deep. They're gonna kill us all. I don't care about any. It's so quickly. It has gone from just this idyllic, I'm gonna present the truth, to now I'm just like any day, Hellfire missiles coming through this window. But with that cheery beginning, Mr. Roth, please introduce yourself, man.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Listen, I'm an author, filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, and I decided to write this book about going on a little over 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I kind of had to really think about it because I'm like, what am I going to do that already hasn't been written? What am I going to write about? I knew that I wasn't going to find a quote unquote smoking gun at this point, 60 years later. I knew that there have been people doing decades and decades of incredible research that I wasn't going to come close to that volume of research. But as a journalist, I'm good at interviewing people and I'm good at asking the right questions. So I decided, you know what if I do like a people's history of the assassination and then get the right people to interview? So I wound up interviewing, well, I interviewed more than 24, but 24 wound up in the book. And they were from different disciplines. They're in the book for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I just asked them questions according to their expertise or experience. And I also asked everyone the same questions, which were really the theme of the book, which was why it still matters. And I think that's a question we all think about, like 60 years ago. Why does it still matter? Well, it still does. And what are the ripple effects? What have been the ripple effects of this assassination? Because people don't think there have been ripple effects. There are direct ripple effects. So I just wanted to present this and, kind of add my own contribution to the research for people to, it's really a jumpstart because people, I feel like, can read this book, they see who's in it, and they might find one chapter they really love, and then boom, they can go and get 12 books based on that chapter.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to do my part.
And and for anyone listening, because I've done like 99% of these episodes not live, I do forget that when I tell people it's going to be live at 4, I now have an obligation. Just as just a complete aside from the podcast we're doing right now. Um, and there you can see my own ego. I'm like, I know we're talking about the shooting of a president, but let me insert the importance of my no, just as like a courtesy thing. I'm remembering now. I'm like, oh, I can't be 8 minutes late anymore. But no, you do pose that question, and there are a couple things in there that I think it's that you do point out, which I think gives it credibility. And one is you quote Bill Hicks, my absolute favorite. Why don't you just let it go, man? It's been 50 years. Well, why don't you just let go of that whole Jesus thing? It's been 2,000 years. Back into the left, back into the left. Bill Hicks is the OG, but it's also you don't make the claim of knowing who it is, and you talk about that in the book, and that's something that I kind of applied to all conspiracies surrounding September 11th, Gulf of Tonkin, the USS Maine, Lusitania, whatever, COVID, is you don't have to know what happened to know, or at least reasonably assume, that the narrative you've been given is false and intentionally false. And you'll kind of see that with people. If you say, yeah, I kind of questioned the events surrounding 9/11, there is something interesting where you will see their passive admittance of what they actually think. It's a wild mind game. They're criticizing you for believing in a conspiracy, right? Sorry, there's a siren going off. They're criticizing you for believing in a conspiracy, and then they will go to actually admit the conspiracy they believe in without even realizing it. They'll be like, "Oh, you believe Dick Cheney did it?" And I'll be like, "I never said that, but you just did," right? So, but no, it's like, no, I don't believe that. But there was just some weird things surrounding it. There was some weird, military operations that day. There was some weird high frequency trading that day. There was a paper that came out, the Project for a New American Century right before, and a lot of people made a lot of money off of it. And like, it's kind of like archaeology. Like, you're not going to know exactly what the T-Rex ate that morning 100 million years ago. All right, you can find its foot, you can find its spine, you can find other T-Rexes in that area. You can look at geologic data and be like, we're kind of, we're shading the outside structure, like when you put a piece of paper over a quarter and then draw over it with a pencil. Like, you're getting a general idea. You're never going to find a memo from LBJ with his blood thumbprint on it with verifiable DNA that says we're gonna shoot the president. You're never gonna find that. But the point of this whole meandering tangent is and then what is the importance? Well, if it can happen, it can happen again. And that precedent has been set, and the idea that elections have consequences, well, so do coups d'etats, right? And if you ever wonder why is it, it's this, we accept it as the norm, right? The military industrial complex runs the whole show. Everyone's corrupt. That's not the norm. That's been our norm, right? And so there is reason to continue to pursue it. There's reason to pursue, the USS Maine. You talk about Smedley Butler. It's one of my favorites. You have to look at the dominoes falling over the last century, century and 10, century and 20 years to have any sort of grasp of when the next domino might fall, and to not just go, oh, it's all the USS Maine, the Lusitania, the Federal Reserve, the year after the Titanic, the Zimmer telegram, the Pearl Harbor, the Gulf of Tonkin, JFK, John Hinckley Jr. shooting President Reagan when he was supposed to have dinner with Neil Bush that night, same family as the guy that would become president. You look at all these things, and then you get to like 2019, you go, but COVID was natural. Like, there is an importance to looking at it. And I know I've been verbally abusing you and not letting you speak. So your thoughts on my whole diatribe just now.
No, listen, you're not abusing because it's right. And I love the way you I sit there like you do sometimes, and it's just kind of, you're thinking out loud almost. And I love that because it's part of the critical thinking process, right?
Hmm.
And I talk about that in the book, but you're right about everything you said. And it is important because when you look back, you realize what this country really is. And it is not an easy thing. You were talking about how people react and how people would come on and say, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist or blah, blah, blah. And human beings are very strange creatures. And I made sure that an entire section of the book is dedicated to the psychology and kind of the philosophy takes on the Kennedy assassination. But most importantly, what is it about humans that make them believe whatever authority tells them, A, and B, what makes people do the horrible things that they do? Including killing the president of the United States. And why do people do that? So, you go into this whole idea of ego and power and this idea of an elitist mentality that's been in this country for a very long time. And we were founded by certain people. We were built by certain people. Always on the backs of the masses, right? You go back to, like you said something interesting 120, 130 years ago. Well, that was the railroads, right? That was the railroad barons and the banking
slaves. Yeah.
Chinese slaves, right? And then let's just wipe out all the Native Americans because they're in our way. So this is part of our history that we have to come to terms with. But I think a lot of people are not comfortable believing that their government would ever be quote unquote the bad guy or the guy with the black hat. You know, the United States in 1963, there was this idea of American exceptionalism,
Yeah.
right? That we were the best. We wore the white hats because, listen, we won World War II. We defeated the Nazis. But what people didn't realize is before the war was even over, the CIA was preparing to get a lot of these Nazis safely out of Germany and either in the United States or into Argentina, Operation Paperclip, which
Yeah.
is no longer a conspiracy theory. It's a fact.
Oh.
We know this happened, right? And a lot of the people involved actually, and this is what people don't, when they realize this, their jaw drops and they realize it. But a lot of these people, the John Dulleses, the Allen Dulleses, the George Bush family, all these, the Rockefellers, Henry Ford, they like the Nazis. Make no mistake about it.
We were funding the rise of them.
We funded the rise of them.
Paperclip. We gave them money before.
We kind of liked their politics, right? They were all these men were all incredibly anti-Semitic, incredibly racist. Yeah. They hated everyone that was an East Coast blue blood elitist.
Yeah.
And this is who they are. Right. So for them, the Nazis were kind of cool. So, but what happened is before the end of the war, it's like, well, they turned their attention to communism, which for them was a much more comfortable enemy.
Yeah.
But they helped a lot of Nazis. And not only did they it wasn't just Werner von Braun they brought over to help with the space program. They brought over 3,500 of them. Some of them went right into the MK Ultra program, which is another CIA program we now know is not a conspiracy theory, is a fact. MK Ultra existed, and they brought these guys. And imagine bringing these Nazi guys in who were like the best at mind manipulation and, you know, all of that stuff, right? And propaganda. They looked up to Goebbels. They thought, oh my God, this guy's awesome, right? He was like the king of propaganda. And they used the same MO as the Nazis. Like, that's what people don't realize. And I think you have to understand that in order to understand why Kennedy was killed in 1963 and also who probably did it.
Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed Norman Ohler, the author who wrote the book Blitzed about Nazis and drug use. Great book. But Mind Control, it's a nod. It's spelled MK. It's a nod to Nazi experiments, I think, in Dachau. Like, it's not, we didn't, there's just like, there's onions of like, all right, Operation Paperclip's not a conspiracy, but we had to have rockets. All right, but what about like Otto Ambrose, the chemist? Like,
right.
Like, oh, well, we needed rubber. All right, but what about Kurt Bloma with vaccines and bio? All right, well, we needed them too. But what about Unit 731 from Japan, an entirely different empire that tortured American POWs, and we brought the head of it, Shiro Ishii. I don't know if we brought back Shiro, but we brought back all the other heads, and it's like, all right, well, we had to beat the commies, and it's like, yeah, well, what about like the birth of propaganda and like and it just goes, and then you go back even further, and you're like, it wasn't just not like we helped them rise. Like, we were funding them, like Brown Brothers Harriman, and that might not have been that, but like we were helping.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay. We were helping fund their industry. And it's like, well, you know, that was just the 30s. And it's like, yeah, well, Hitler rose in 1933. And then wasn't that like the same year that we tried to set up a fascist dictatorship in this country with, I don't know, Smedley Butler and DuPont and the Remingtons came to him and said, hey, will you take 500,000 soldiers and march on DC and remove FDR and you'll be the king of America? And it's weirdly kind of left out of American history. And it's like, well, and it's like at a certain point, it is more deranged to not believe in any conspiracies than it is to believe it.
It is.
Like, it has tipped entirely. It has gone the entire different direction to where if you now believe that there are no conspiracies, that is more insane than believing that Hillary Clinton's a reptile and that the earth is flat. If you believe that it's like that Norm Macdonald joke. You know, I was reading a history book. Isn't that what a coincidence that every time in history the good guys won?
It's so true.
All right,
right.
All right, we'll just walk down this road and like,
yeah, and you know, you mentioned Smedley Butler, who, what a hero, because he refused.
Original gangster.
Yeah. Well, listen, he refused, right? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he was a hero in that scenario, which is why he wrote.
He played dumb like a fox and actually he wrote War as a Racket, but there's two other books of The Plot to Seize the White House. I don't remember who it's by, and that's about it. And then Stephen Kinzer, was it Kinzer? No, Katz wrote Gangsters of Capitalism, and it's about Smedley's rise. He didn't just refuse it. Sorry to interrupt. He didn't just refuse it. He played dumb to
Right.
find out the thread and then exposed it at the House of
Expose it.
Un-American Activities. And the New York Times called it basically fake news. If it happened today, there'd be a banner under it on YouTube and Twitter that says this has been debunked. They said it. They said probably no. New York Times said this doesn't happen, and then the House on Un-American Activities came out and go, no, this is a probable conspiracy.
Right. Right.
All
But
right.
that's not on the front page, right? Because that's a big part of it too, because they have to control the message, they have to control the narrative, and they've always controlled the narrative. And that goes back to Operation Mockingbird, which is also in the book when people talk about it. But that was a real thing, okay, where the CIA, they infiltrated the Washington Post, the New York Times, all these other, they had to have that in place in order to successfully kill Kennedy and have a cover up. In order for the cover up to work, they had to have the mainstream media. Now, there were independent journalists and some people who were like, this is bullshit. Right? And this is just, there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. I tell people all they have to do is remember that Jack Ruby walked into a police station with 80 cops and detectives around,
Oswald.
walked right up to Oswald and shoot him and kill him before Oswald could have his day in court. If that doesn't tell you, as a critical thinker, if that doesn't tell you that there was a conspiracy, that's all you need to know. You don't need to know anything else. And if you knew that, and it's funny, I talked to someone who had gotten a feel for what Europeans were thinking. The Europeans knew it was a conspiracy right away.
They called bullshit that evening.
Because they had such long histories of bullshit that
they had seen it. That's the thing, is right. They had seen it.
They had seen it in their countries, and we were just so naive. And again, this idea of American exceptionalism and howdy doody and listen.
Yeah,
I mean, right.
Yeah,
why shatter that? You shatter that. And that's what people talk about in the book. I found this one of the most fascinating parts of it. This idea of cognitive dissonance. The idea that if you believe something and then you learn something that goes against your beliefs, you will disregard what you just learned. You will, and that's what people like. If they the Warren Commission, well, they're they're not going to lie to us. They're our leaders. There it is, right? And then if you're like, and then Clay, some other people came out, including oh my God, what's the guy? New Orleans. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank right now. Yeah, but anyway, he comes out and he starts fighting that, and other people start fighting that. Dorothy Kilgallen comes out and she starts fighting that, and she winds up murdered, she killed. But then people are like, no, that's not, our government will never do that, because the thought of that is so uncomfortable to most people that they'd rather just believe what the government's telling them, and they can sleep better at night.
And like,
that's it.
I also, like, on a human level, like, I also get that. Like,
oh, I get it.
It's, why would you want pain? And on like a more serious, not that we haven't been talking about serious things, which shows how diluted my mind is, that I take talking about Kennedy as a joke. In 2014, my older brother committed suicide, and like, it's easier to go to bed thinking like, well, depression's a mental illness, there's really nothing you can do. No, you got to go back eventually and observe it and go, I probably could have done more. Could I have changed it? I don't know. I can't look at it objectively. Obviously, it's my own blood brother. But after I put my head in the sand for about 9 months, I was just like, well, he's in a better place. It just went about my life. And it was like taking a syringe full of morphine and just putting it right in my prefrontal cortex and just like, I'm not addressing that. And then I think if I could have successfully stayed cognitively dissonant, I would have, but I couldn't. And eventually you address it, and it's a horrible process of self-discovery, of pulling apart the onion layers of your own soul. But ironically enough, kind of like the CIA, the truth will set you free. And once you get to it, and it might take a year, 2 years, spoiler alert, takes about 7 years of just unimaginable horror and depression. You come out of it looking at it as soberly as you can. You make peace with it. It's like paying off your bills. It's shitty, but there's no more interest, and you're like, it's that feeling of like when you take care of all of the stuff you have to do. You take the trash out, you go get gas in the car, you get groceries, you're exhausted, but that level of just like, I did it all. I did everything. I can now see it in friends. I can see it in other family, and I can fearlessly approach it. Instead of the hey man, you text a friend, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I can be much more like, hey dude, I've seen what this does to a family, and I know that you're probably getting a lot of nice texts, but I'm gonna tell you I lost a brother to suicide, and I have his initials tattooed on my shoulder. Can you tell me what's going on? And that's you have a much more real effect. So kind of like the Kennedy assassination, why does it still matter? Well, why does it matter that I lost a brother in April 2014? Well, it still matters because it's been almost 10 years, it's been almost 9 years. But by addressing it and treating it very real, it can have real effects today instead of just putting your head in the sand. And then someone else, commits suicide and go, well, there's nothing we could have done. Versus, hey, let's take the painful approach. Let's look at the sun. I know it's bright, but let's actually try to figure something out about it. And that is kind of a microcosm of why this is important. So we can go, well, the government would never, just kind of that Andy Griffith apple pie on the windowsill. Like we beat the night. It's like, okay, yeah, but we also, sure, we lost 425,000 American GIs. Russians lost 27 million. Those bad guys who are currently
Right.
fighting Nazis, but that's another thing for another time that we just won't address. And that doesn't mean tear it. That doesn't mean that this whole thing's shit. Clearly, I like this country. I think if anything, it makes you value it more when you accept it for warts and all. And then you don't even view it passively anymore. You go, you don't even have to accept it warts and all. You can accept past warts. And how can we change them? How can we remove
Right.
them? And there is real things. It has a very real effect. Now you look at it, you go, I think you said in the book, you accept that grandpa was kind of an asshole and he was racist. That doesn't mean he wasn't a good grandpa. It doesn't mean he didn't raise your mom or dad right. But he was from a time when they shot black people with fire hoses. Accept it for what it is. Accept that our grandkids were probably going to look at things you and I are saying during this podcast and say, look at those bigots. But you look at it and you go, how can we be better? And there's a very real effect of it. And it's a very empowering effect. You don't feel, like you said in the book, you lose the learned helplessness. And you go,
Right.
that sucks. That really sucks what happened. What can we do today? And so there is a very real effect. And that whole clip right there, that should be my motivational. When I start my motivational speaking company, that will be my clip. As the flag behind me, Carrigan 2024.
Well, listen, you heal as well when you face the truth. And when you
Yes.
go down that more difficult path, you heal. You did it as an individual. People can do it as individuals, but we haven't done it as a country because the facts of that major, major event in our history 60 years ago, which has had lasting ripple effects, we've never healed from it. And that's why we're so broken now. Nothing's been the same. It's what you say is strong because there's healing. It's a healing process as well that you go through when you really are able to face the truth and get past it and perhaps then make things better.
Yeah. And, or you can ignore it, right? You can just put
Yeah.
it all on the credit card. And that's fine for
Right.
today. I'll stop drinking tomorrow, right? Yeah. But then don't be surprised when, isn't that kind of weird that like we were researching SARS-CoV-2 in a lab in 2016 and then it popped up in 2019? If you,
Right.
as Duncan Trussell, the comedian, said about working on things, he goes, don't be surprised that plants are growing when every day you're just throwing seeds in there. You can't keep throwing the alcohol seed in there and then wondering why you have DUIs. Like
Right.
it's
All
it's
right.
it's it's the workout quote or the dieting quote. Suffer the pain of discipline or suffer the pain of regret. There's no way out of it. You're suffering one way or another. Address it or it's going to keep happening. And I think that is sort of the thing though, is you just have to address it. And we are lucky in that there are still people alive who are loosely involved with this. And like you said in your book, people from many walks of life. And you can start to put all the puzzle pieces together.
Right.
Yeah, I don't.
You can. There's still time to oh wow, come to a place of understanding in this, at least with this. I mean, listen, there's so much that has happened in our history, but as far as the Kennedy assassination, I feel like with the Kennedy assassination, it is one of the most important events in our history. Certainly one of the most tragic, one of the most telling, and one of the most consequential. But that's exactly right. We need to continue to just talk to people who were there, who knew Oswald. I mean, these people are getting older, and there is a younger generation taking the torch and saying, okay, well, I'm gonna try to get all those records. I'm gonna try to get all those documents, blah blah blah. Even though they're 99% redacted, but they still trying at least, right? Because the CIA is never going to come out and say we knew this. We knew Oswald worked
Of
for
course not.
us.
Yeah.
We set him up as a patsy, blah blah blah. And you're never going to find any of that. It's like you said, you're not going to find, Lyndon Johnson's bloody thumbprint on a document,
I
right?
did
They
it,
were
and here's a hair sample.
right, exactly. I mean, they were all in one way, shape, or form culpable, if not in the actual act, certainly in the cover up. And again, it's funny you mentioned the COVID and you mentioned some of this other stuff, but we have to realize there's a whole chapter in the book. I interviewed this guy named Ed Haslam, and he wrote this book, Dr. Mary's Monkey. And there's a section in the book called New Orleans Summer of '63. Well, that's where Oswald was. And by the way, Jim Garrison, that's where the whole movie JFK takes place when he was looking into, indicting people for the murder. So he opened up the case. But the things that were going on in New Orleans in the summer of '63 would literally make your hair curl. I mean, it wasn't just sheep dipping Oswald and some of the other stuff. It was weaponizing cancer
Everything.
to kill Castro and other leaders that were a pain in the neck to us, that didn't fit our, they could have been democratically elected leaders, like Guatemala. It was a democratically elected leader.
He's got to
Well,
go. They're trying to
he's got to
nationalize Dole.
go.
They're trying to nationalize Dole.
Right.
Absolutely,
Exactly right.
absolutely not.
And who were major stockholders in United Fruit Company? Allen Dulles, John Foster Dulles,
Wait,
half the
are you
people who were in
insinuating?
Skull and Bones
Are
and
you
Yale.
insinuating that the military-industrial complex is just marching through countries and toppling governments because there's a financial interest? I can't go there, Jet.
Listen, that's really sad, because one of the things that people don't know about this, and Oliver Stone brought it up in his latest documentary, but Kennedy was he started that, and I don't remember the exact name because I didn't do this for the book, but I learned about it from the documentary. He wanted that all African nations to be sovereign,
Yeah.
and right. And he was, the Congo. We had this really cool guy in there, right? And we basically got him killed. There was a coup. We didn't want these people in because we didn't want them to be sovereign. There was more money to make on nations and their resources when they're not sovereign.
Yeah.
So we can control things. So it's sad. It's dark. You say why people would. I think you and I both would be happier people, and I'd sleep better at night if I hadn't done all the research, and you hadn't done all the research you've done. If I just buried my head in the sand, I'd just be
I'd actually,
happy.
I'd actually argue and say that it's a very difficult interim period, but I think I'd sleep even better now because you build a tolerance to the shock factor.
Right.
You start to accept it as like, yeah, demons are running amok. And it's very dark at the beginning, but then there are other things like seeing a baby being born or like a beautiful sunset.
Right.
And you're like, that's still this like whatever you want to call it, God, the universe. You're like, there is still this like
Yes.
uh there is still this like beauty that cannot be perverted. And that is, if anything, I think I sleep bit. Now there's a very rough interim period, but like there is a jumping in the pool is cold, but you're in there for 10 seconds and you go, okay, yeah, it's fine. Right? It's still a pool. You jump in, you dip your toe, and you go, that's so cold. I'm not doing that shit. You see your friend jump in, he comes out and he goes, oh, oh, and he's splashing around. You're like, dude, I don't want to do that. And then a couple minutes pass and he starts wading. And he's like, actually, water's fine. We've all done it, right? Yeah, and then you realize, hey, I am in a pool in July with a beer. Like, yeah, it's good. I think there is still peace that you can get to if you just and you talked about it like, well, why would people do this? I think the very fact that people can't believe people do this is beautiful because it shows the vast majority of us have an inherent goodness in us that we project and thus we can't comprehend it. That is beautiful. That 99% of people go, you wouldn't kill someone just to set up a business. That means that 99 out of 100 people are good. We're so
Right.
close. We're so close to going, yes. And some of us are assholes. Let's address that. And then it can be good. And I mean, the very fact that Kennedy did get to office and wanted the nations of Africa to be sovereign, that's good. Like, we got close. Sure, they blew
Right.
his head off, but like, we got to the 1 yard line. Like, that's not a bad thing.
Right.
I don't know.
There were people on the other side. There are people on the other side. And these men, they all need to come to, in the end, they all need to live with their nefarious deeds, right? I remember James Angleton. We had mentioned that before the show started. You know, here's this guy. He was known as
Jesus
evil. I mean,
Angleton. Yeah.
just an unbelievable at
Yeah.
CIA. I mean, one of the worst of the worst. And he said before he died, he was dying, so he knew he was dying. And
Yeah.
he made, and I don't know the exact quote, but they were talking to him, and he said something to the effect like, "The guys I work with and blah blah, they were the most evil, blah 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 blah, and I'll be seeing them all in hell soon."
He takes a sip of his drink and goes, and I'll see
Takes a
I'll,
sip of
I'll see
his,
them in hell soon. Yeah.
"I'll see them in hell soon," and that was like his 57th martini, because this is something I also learned is that the CIA guys, these Cold Warriors, these guys that did these things, eventually they all wound up alcoholics. And that is something that I really found interesting doing the research for this book, because I interviewed the kids, their children, and they're like, yeah, dad was a raging alcoholic, mom became
Functioning.
a raging
Yeah.
alcoholic, functioning, barely functioning. And they knew what they were. It caught up to them. At first, you think, I'm a patriot. I'm doing this because I'm a patriot, right? And they might even think, well, World War II, we were the good guys, OSS, and now we're the CIA, but we're doing this for national security. And then you're like, we just killed Dorothy Kilgallen, who's basically a private citizen and a woman who never picked up a gun in her life. And we also just killed Mary Pinchot Meyer, another private citizen who, you know, because she knew Kennedy and she had a diary. So like they were doing these things, and then they were killing hundreds of thousands in other countries because of these coups, and killing virtually 1 million Vietnamese. I mean, all these wars add up, right? And when you know why you're really doing it, that just, man, I'm telling you, you have to be the biggest sociopath who ever lived and just has no feelings whatsoever and no sense of feeling anything for any other human beings to be able to do this. And I think a lot of these guys had those traits, which is something else I learned from interviewing these people. The traits that go along with power and this elitism, and there's a lot of there's sociopathy, there's psychopathy, there is egomaniacs, like all these things that if you were to do a profile on Lyndon Johnson, a psychological profile on him,
Messianic
you would,
narcissist.
oh my God. I mean, but these are the guys that seek power.
Yeah.
And the way the system is, we just vote for them because they're the ones that are actually on the ballot. So, like, you know, they're the ones, and they're the ones, the guys with the elitist attitudes are the ones that go to Yale and Harvard because their families, it's all set up, and they become the federal judges and the, you know, the generals and the, you know, the captains of industry, right? And the head of the CIA and the head of the FBI. So that's the problem. And it's systemic. But I do agree with you that there's these people, whatever they do, they can't take away our free will. They can't take away our ability to continue to love, to continue to try to do the right thing, to continue to try to improve our country and make things better. Like we'll do what we can while we're here on this planet, right? And you're right. There is something that makes you feel lighter. You feel good about that because you feel like, I'm not just watching this happen, right? Like a lot of the Germans in 1930s Germany, they just watched. They didn't do anything. There was apathy.
Yeah.
They just wanted their economy to be better. That's all they cared about. So they'd listen to anyone. And Hitler was a good speaker. So they listened to this crazy guy. And he had Goebbels and the propaganda machine. And there you go. So this is something that I think as private citizens, whether you're doing your podcasts, I'm writing books, documentaries, whatever we do, that's our no one can take that away from us. I mean, I'm sure that they could kill us, but I mean, short of that, short of that.
There's going to be a clip. This clip right here is going to be the first 10 seconds of the documentary about the mysterious death of Tommy Carrigan and Mr. Roth.
I hope not, but you know
Directed
what?
by
I feel
Oliver
like
Stone, available on Netflix.
exactly right. Oliver will do a really good doc on us,
But
preserve our memories.
yeah, but there are some things you said though, and I'm going to try to do the hard part and find the beauty in that. James G. Zank, The Ghost by Jefferson Morley's great. I mean, yeah, raging alcoholic, you tend to his orchids in his basement. And but there's something even good in there. And it's hard to find this, and I'm gonna try. Because it's so easy to just say they're all evil. So let's take the path less traveled. The fact that they had to anesthetize themselves, there's still some good in there. Right? When people can't, they would never kill a president just for money. Right? That, like we said earlier, that's the goodness in people. They go, I couldn't believe that. Well, it's because you're a good person, right? And that is uplifting to know that that's how most people are. The fact that these guys had to drink themselves stupid is a silver lining, right? Because it starts easily. It's Pearl Harbor and concentration camps. That's a pretty clear cut enemy, right? Now, did we let Pearl Harbor happen? Did we fund the Nazis? Okay, yeah. But for the average poor guy, the average poor 18-year-old, Mr. Roth and Tommy being drafted, right? Those are good guys. You go, yeah, they did Pearl Harbor, concentration camp. Yeah, take them out, right? You're a good person. You're fighting for your country, right? Got it. And then it gets a little more abstract, right? And then there's kind of like a meta theme there of growing up and realizing that things aren't black and white. And it's, despite us joking about Operation Paperclip, yeah, you get to that rarefied air and it's us versus the Soviets. We know that Klaus Fuchs and then the Rosenberg couple, we know that they were smuggling information from the Manhattan Project. And by the time Truman told Stalin about it, Stalin already knew. And then by 1949, under Volodymyr Beria, they did test their first A-bomb. All right. And now what's the next thing is A-bomb delivery. How are we going to do it? Do it during planes or put it on front of a rocket? And we just saw in World War II that rockets could go to London. Okay, so now there's a very real threat there, and it becomes a little more abstract. And yeah, you probably do got to bring back some Nazis, if anything, because the Soviets were, and it's kind of a race to the bottom. You can only be as good as they are.
Right.
I get that there's a lot of naivety. I'm 32 years old with a biology degree. I've never had to fend for my life. I've never gone a night without food. I understand that I don't know about real life and war and the brutality of humans. Okay, so you can maybe justify that. You could then maybe start to desensitize yourself and go in like, yeah, we're gonna do Vietnam. It's a proxy war, but we gotta. Let's say you're a true believer in containing communism, right? You just saw Korea. I'm pretty sure more Americans died in Korea than World War II. It's the forgotten war. Korea just happened, right? Truman, I think his daughter wrote in her diary that when that happened in 1950, Truman said it was the beginning of World War III, and he was lucky that it didn't. So then you see Vietnam. And you go, all right, well, we got to contain communism, and we got the domino theory that these are just going to fall, right? And we just came out of World War II. If you're in the 60s and 70s, World War II is right. It's about as far back as 9/11 is to us. Whereas 3,000 Americans died in 9/11, you're looking at 85 million, including civilian deaths, right? A lot of these guys probably served, so it's not even this abstract idea of my grandpa's grandpa. No, I was there, right? I was on Okinawa. Okay. But you start to see all these things. And then, like you said, eventually you start to see that you yourself are being used, much like Smedley Butler realizing this is like, oh, we might even still be doing the right thing and it's dirty work. But what are these companies making a ton of money? And oh, the higher ups in these intelligence agencies are also on the board of directors of these. That is where you then come to the crossroads and realize that you can't fudge the numbers anymore, right? Up until then, you could still just be a good guy, knowing that there is dirty work to do, but you're doing, what's the quote? I hope there are no difficulties, or I hope there is no war in life, but if it may come, let it come in my lifetime so my sons don't have to fight. There's something honorable in doing the dirty, shitty work. But then when you start to realize what it is, and it's a money driven machine, there is beauty in that those guys had to drink themselves stupid. If they didn't, oh man, that would be the black pill of all black pills. Like, oh, I just like killing people and knocking over countries. You'd be like, oh, I'd take the flag down now. But there is an abstract, almost perverted beauty in knowing that they had to drink themselves stupid, because that shows that there is some pain, there is some light of truth, there is an ember that they just had to shovel dirt onto. And you might think that's a kind of a psychotic take to have, but I think you have to find like the one gem, the one silver lining in all of this. And like, so I guess that's my thesis. The fact that these guys were alcoholics shows there's still goodness in humans. I don't know.
No, because there's some humanity in them, and therefore they're not complete psychopaths, right? They care a little bit, or they're over time. You can get so caught up in something, and then 10, 20 years after the fact, you realize, oh my God, what did I do? So you have time to reflect. And then when you're dying, like Angleton was, then you really reflect. And literally start, oh my God, I'm going to hell. He was convinced if there was a hell, he was going to, because of the things he had done. But like you said, the fact that he was even thinking that and drinking himself into a coma suggests that there was humanity in him that made him realize that, wow, I was a son of a bitch in this life.
And there is some reflection there.
Right.
And now it almost kind of makes sense when you think about like what priest goes and talks to a serial killer before they're put to death. And you realize like there's still a thread of humanity. And I don't think you can quash that. And then there's still a smaller subsection of that of people who feel nothing. They're the ones who were orchestrating all of this.
Those are the hitmen. Those are the one. That's the guy behind the grassy knoll. That's the guy. You know what I'm saying? That's the guy who's, in the concentration camp shooting people, 80 people a day in the head.
Loving it.
Those guys.
Those are demons.
Yeah. Right.
I don't think there's really any silver lining to that. But if we don't address that they exist, they're going to use good people that may be not even like some poor 18-year-old that thinks he's dying for his country, but they might use an Angleton who thought he was doing the right thing and then later has to drink himself to death. There are people behind that there's nothing behind the eyes. And if we pretend that they don't exist, this is just going to keep going forever and ever and ever. There's going to be another presidential whack. There's going to be another bio. Not even America. It'll be 500 years and China will be in charge, and there will be a whatever. They'll have their JFK. They'll have their 9/11, and it will keep going and going and going. And you just have to look it in the eye and address that. And it's not like a fun process, but there is you said it perfectly. There's a lightness. You looked behind the machine. You saw how the sausage was made and it was gross. And then you just accepted, well, if we want to feed a lot of people, we're going to have to make sausage in odd ways. And you just kind of come to peace with it. I don't know.
Then also too, I mean, I'm sorry, but
no, you're good.
if you, the better you understand human nature, then you better understand history and why history has been the way it's been. And you understand why the present is the way it is. And you also can, let's say, predict the future, but you know that if human nature, the best parts of human nature aren't brought forward and the bad parts of human nature kept in check, that it's going to be a horrible future.
Yeah.
And, they could, the people that they recruited after World War II for the CIA and these guys were patriots. They were Cold Warriors. They were literally the guys who, were, okay, we need to stop the Russians because this is a democracy. And they were all gung ho. And a lot of these guys, you add that to the fact that they also had an elitist mindset. So you have Alan Dulles, who is everyone, like he was a god back then. You're in his office. He's interviewing you and he wants you. He's recruiting you. You just graduated Yale, skull and bones, everything. You're in his office. And he's like, man, we want you in the CIA. So, well, I kind of wanted to do something else. Well, listen, the CIA needs you. And here's why it needs you. First of all, we're fighting the red threat, the red menace. And think about what we just went through. That would mean 500,000 Americans died for nothing in World War II. Well, that gets to you, right? So then you're thinking as a patriot. Then he says, and let's face it, you're too good to be doing anything else. You are the top of the top. And here's where the elitist thing comes in. It's like your family and you deserve to be the ones making these decisions for the rest of the masses. The country is better off when you're making those decisions, not them. Okay, I'm in. You're 18, 20 in your early 20s, and you're like, wow, Alan Dulles thinks I'm really cool, and then it's like, all these things he pours that on. And again, that's talk about MK Ultra-ish kind of stuff, right? That's all kind of like,
you didn't even need acid.
Totally messing with your head.
Yeah,
right?
Forget LSD. It's the oldest, just getting that old paternal approval. And listen,
exactly.
Listen, we both know you're a cut above the rest of these mouth breathers. These guys,
right?
These guys eat glue. You're the tip of the spear, and you're like, I am the tip of the spear, right? And imagine if you grow up in a time and you don't have internet and you can't research all this shit on your own. You've never heard of Smedley Butler, and then your dad's some GI from World War II.
Yep.
And you're going, now the Russians and the Nazis didn't even have A-bombs with rockets. The Russians are now going to drop this. And then there's the whole, like, what are the odds that, like, the one time we build this country throughout all of the history of man, and it's elected for the people, by the people, and it just so happens to be on this continent full of natural resources with an ocean on the left and an ocean on the right. And not only that, and also a mountain range on the left and a mountain range on the right, an Arctic tundra above us, and not really at the time, but now just a cartel hellhole below us. Wow, an impenetrable fortress that by the providence of God broke away from the strongest empire the world's ever seen. And it's this gem of all gems that has landed in a glove made of gems. Son, are you willing to defend this? I mean, at that point, you're standing up with a fucking sparkler behind you, and you're like, I'm in, right? And that sucks. It's because and that's what a surprise. Evil, demonic people will take advantage of the best among us, right? People who are like, you're right. Why did McNamara was like the CEO of Ford or something? He left that job to go be Secretary of Defense. The guy that led up, I think there's a great book called The Atomic Bomb and the Missile Age. I can't remember who I interviewed him, but there was like another guy, which oddly enough was like another car CEO. I think like a Chrysler CEO. And he came and oversaw like the procurement of missiles and how to streamline it, much like you'd streamline the creation of a car. It was like, hey, we need 10,000 of these. You had these guys that left these incredible jobs and they made like 1,000th of what they made, but it's to fight the Red Menace.
Right.
You're taking the best of the best. You're getting tapped for the Olympic team. But the guy
and with the American public, right? And we all bought it hook, line, and sinker. And then think about that. Take it from there. And then here comes Kennedy, 1960. And people say, well, wasn't Kennedy a blue blood? He's like, no, he wasn't a blue blood. Kennedy, he might have had a Harvard education, but first of all, they were Irish.
He was an Irish
Catholic.
He was like me,
Irish Catholic.
Carrigan. He's a white pasty. He should have been in the fields getting hit with a whip, but he had a jawbone and a full head of hair. And his dad made $1 billion off of alcohol.
Yeah, right, bootlegger, right? So they look down on them. But here's what I think happened, and some of the people I talked to were they referred to this a little bit, but the Kennedys at that time. So John and Bobby, they're both fairly young, and they all of a sudden one's president, one's attorney general. There was some ego there too. So here's a guy, Kennedy, is like, I'm the president. I'm going to change things. I'm going to fire Alan Dulles because he lied to me about the Bay of Pigs.
Mm.
The sacred cow of Cold War and the Cold Warriors, Alan Dulles, he fires him. That was his first nail in his coffin. Well, there were probably a couple others, but before that, but that was a huge nail in his coffin. And who winds up on the Warren Commission report? Alan Dulles, right? Like, come on, man. Again, be a critical thinker. Think through this a little bit. You know, right? So Kennedy wanted to do all these things that would take money and power away from these people who had all the money and all the power. Whether it's be, I want everyone out of Vietnam by 65. Well, no, because Bell Helicopter and General Dynamics and all the people we know and have stock in are going to make billions of dollars on that war. So we're absolutely going into Vietnam, right? And then of course Lyndon Johnson, do anything to be president. He's like, I'll take you to Vietnam. I'll get you in there. I'll stay in there too, and I'll keep bringing troops
direct
in.
ties to helicopter companies.
Yes. Well, it's all the Texas cronies, right? So you have the oil guys and you have all those, right? Exactly.
Oil depletion
Lyndon
allowance.
Johnson was probably the most corrupt politician we've ever had, and we've had corrupt politicians. Lyndon Johnson was the worst. That was probably one of the most fascinating chapters that I have in the book, interviewing Nilsson, and his book's amazing. But anyway, my point is that Kennedy was everything. Kennedy had to know that his life was in danger. Although people say, no, he really didn't think. And I'm thinking, well, he didn't have a top on the car.
I think he did.
I mean, yeah, it seems like I've been to Dealey Plaza. I went recently for the first time after writing the book. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And I'm just like, man, it was a turkey shoot. This was just, he had no chance.
I think he knew.
Do you think he knew he was going to really get it that day?
I think
maybe not that day. Maybe I don't know.
Not that day. I think he knew. In my mind, and again, Kennedy is no schmuck. He's a World War II vet, right? He's no pussy. Like this dude, like lost in a torpedo boat. Like this dude's a GI. Like we forget it because he's tall and good looking and had like 1,000 girls. This dude is no different than just your grizzled, Saving Private Ryan. He was there. I think that he probably, I would say he is at the very least as intelligent as you and I are, if not more. He probably he understands the abstraction, the paperclip. He probably gets, hey, it's not all black and white. There's some evil, but it's for the greater good. I think he probably understood it. Bay of Pigs. He knows he's also dealing with other egos, the Dulles brothers, Curtis LeMay, Angleton.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at a certain point, he looked it in the eye and said, like, oh, okay, like we're beyond the abstraction. We're beyond the judge argue or the really good lawyer arguing to get someone off. And it's like, hold on, no, you're defending like a child rapist. Like, I don't care how tongued you are. Like, you're a demon lawyer. I think he knew. And this is, again, who knows, maybe my own projection. It's very romantic. Camelot, right? Dies and he's young and he's forever solidified. He only the good die young. He's not an old guy. He's forever this young, stunning guy. I don't know. I think he knew. I think he was at the top of the mountain and he saw it, and he saw the demons all around him. It was probably like, in the quietness of his own mind, I would imagine, it was like, I'm going to do this. And he is right. It's a win-win. He either succeeds or they're going to be forced to act. And their actions will still show their hand in who they are. I don't think he was that idyllic. He was just like, let's have world peace. I think he knew, like, no.
He and Bobby both knew what they were up against. You see it.
100%.
You see it in their, and even in their speeches, Kennedy's speech, American University speech. I highly recommend people listen to that. He literally calls them out in that speech.
Yeah.
And of course, that was his last speech.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally calls these elitists out. Like, it was unbelievable. And then
he's naming
dead.
The deep state. He's
naming the deep state. I think there was a part of him. He very well knew the demons around him, but there was I think, in my opinion, there was a part of him that's like, there's no way they have the gall to kill me.
Yeah.
They might try to rig the next election.
Yeah.
But shoot me? Come on.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's how because it was like, I don't know. It was so
That's a good
like,
point.
you know,
Because the speeches
but
he
he
was
was
giving, he had lost all facade of any sort of bullshit. That
right.
you almost think if he actually believed that. I think he actually. I'm kind of changing my position. I think you're probably right. I think he was probably like, they're not going to kill me. They'll have to cheat. Because if he did, everything else he did was such a spitting in the face of them. Why wouldn't he just add one more and go, yeah, they might kill me? If he believed that, he probably would have said it, right? If
Right.
anyone was going to say they're probably it was probably him. After naming them for being demons, why wouldn't he go one step further and say, "Oh, and by the way, they're going to kill me"? Yeah,
And
yeah,
and here's the thing too: the Cuban Missile Crisis scared the hell out of Kennedy. And it was
yeah.
then that he realized, and that's when he started to talk to Khrushchev
Uh huh.
behind the backs of his Joint Chiefs of Staff because
Yeah,
they
back
were all
channel.
crazy. Yeah, back channel because they wanted World War III. They didn't care if 10 million, 20 million people died. Operation Northwoods, here we go again.
Yeah,
CIA, right? We put it's a false flag event. It caused we can drop nukes on Cuba. And well, they might drop a couple on us, but we have first strike advantage. So if we lose 10, 20 million people, who cares? They're
acceptable.
the
It's Doctor
elites.
Strangelove.
Yeah, yeah.
Acceptable losses.
Right, right, exactly. The elitists are going to be in their bunkers, so that's not going to affect them, right? It's just a couple of cities, whatever. We'll win that. So Kennedy, again, I think that scared him, and he realized I have to do something because he had children, right? I mean, he had a wife, he had kids, and Bobby had a wife and kids, and he realized certain things. It was like I have to do something here, and he tried. He did try, and talk about courage and people, it bothers me that people still focus on Kennedy's affairs, right? His womanizing,
Discretions.
his indiscretions, like, and what I say is, listen, name a president. There were probably a couple like Jimmy Carter. There were probably a couple who didn't have indiscretions, but that is not what we need to focus on with Kennedy. And I
FDR
think they do that on purpose.
FDR died in Warm Springs, Georgia, with his mistress.
Right.
Eisenhower's secretary was going to go to the bunker, but his wife didn't have clearance.
Right.
I'm not trying to pull some listen, men are men bullshit, but like
No, it's
at the same time, like, I mean, yeah, I mean,
it
what?
was, yeah.
They're human.
And his
Shut up.
Right. And history is so misogynistic. I mean, it isn't until the
Yes.
last 20 years, maybe even 10, where it wasn't that attitude of like, Mad Men, right? I'm going to have my martini at lunch, sleep with my secretary, then I'll go home to my wife. And it was all okay. And the wives didn't just dealt with it. And that happened. By the way, those CIA guys, same thing. Same
Yeah.
thing.
Have you seen that meme where it's like, man, I wish men treated women like they did when my grandma was a young girl. And then there's like a meme and it's like men when dinner's 5 minutes late, and it just shows like a WWE wrestler throwing someone through a table. It's like it's terrible.
It
And
was
but
so
like
misogynistic, man. It
now
was incredible.
give you guys a little inside baseball. We are now going for that woke crowd. We've moved from the conspiracy demographic to now we are shifting the podcast to the woke white men are bad crowd. No, but really it doesn't wipe clean what they did, but it's also like you gonna wait for the perfect person? Thomas Jefferson owned slaves.
Right.
George Washington. Well, I mean, who the Declaration of Independence in the course of human events, right? And it's like all men are made equal, and then that's like, okay, well, are we gonna just rip apart all of history and find the perfect person? There was like three of them, and they were all killed. It's like Jesus,
Right.
Gandhi, and I don't know someone. Right?
Right, right.
It's
They all died very young, right?
yeah, yeah, and
But
so
listen, Jefferson was a wealthy Southern landowner, educated. In those days, they all had slaves. And I'm not slavery is the worst thing. I mean, that's something we're again talk about healing, and we haven't healed from. That's another thing that's a problem for our country. But Jefferson, I mean, anyone at that time, he also happened to be, I think, one of the greatest Americans who ever lived. He just happened to be a Southern during the late the 1700s and early 1800s. He was also, and people don't want to hear this, but he was very good to his slaves. They were still slaves, right? And there's no excuse for that. But this is what these guys did back then, right? So it's kind of, you have to take history with all of it, the good and the bad, and say, well, he did this, he owned slaves, okay, but like if we found out he was like really cruel person and cruel to his slaves, then it's like, oh God, he was
Yeah,
kind of a
screw him.
yeah, exactly. But he married, I mean, not married, but he definitely slept. He loved at least one of his slaves and had many, many kids with them. Half of Virginia this day it's Jefferson. and
I mean,
they're mixed race.
yeah. And it's like George Washington was like writing to his dad when he was 12, asking like when he was going to receive slaves of his own. Like, it's not whitewashing it. I get it's just more of like, oh, like what the hell do you think history has been?
Right.
What? Yeah, it's all barbaric and yeah, but so we just screw it all because they're evil. All right, it doesn't matter what you and I do today. Our kids and grandkids will look at something I've done on this podcast and look down on it. And if not them, their grandkids and their grandkids. And eventually something will have been threatening. The fact that like my head is tilted this way instead of that way will be the new middle finger. And they'll be like, look at that guy. He's a left tilted head guy. And it's just like, if you went back in time to 2023, it'd be like, the hell are you talking about? Like, so it's,
Right.
but to get back to Kennedy's indiscretions, like, yeah, yeah, yes, I'm not even denying, not good. What he did to Jackie was terrible. You can read like Jackie's diaries, and she's heartbroken, and then she goes and meets Onassis, who she would eventually be with. And Kennedy acted like a jealous jock boyfriend. He was using the power of the presidency to like hunt her down and like harass them. She was on some yacht, or whoever the Onassis guy who was some, I don't know, I forget where he made his money, but he was like a billionaire. He was like
Mm-hmm.
harassing her all hours of the day. All she wanted to do was like feel loved. And it's like, yes, it sucks.
Right. Right. Yeah, that was
Okay.
definitely, it was a flaw in his personality without
Of
question. It was
course.
a,
And
yeah, he
call it
was
what it is. It was a flaw. He was an asshole that cheated on the mother of his children. No contest
right.
here. Yes.
Right. But he was also our last best hope for world peace.
Yeah.
And since then, we haven't been close.
I think you're right. I think the Cuban Missile Crisis showed him. It's like what I always think about, someone's like, if you disclose this secret, we'll kill your family. And if it's like an evil dictator or someone who's trying to like blow up the world, and if you disclose it, we're going to kill you and your family, you have to realize that if they're willing to kill you and your family to like silence a grand conspiracy, the grand conspiracy probably also includes the death of you and your family. So it's like it doesn't, the arithmetic doesn't balance out. Like it's happening now. I think he probably looked at it like, oh, I mean, it is wild that we can listen to the recordings in when they're discussing the Cuban Missile Crisis. Like with that, talk about being a fly on the wall. You can go to
Mm-hmm.
YouTube and listen to the recordings of him and Curtis LeMay. It is insane. You can listen to the phone call of him on the phone with Eisenhower, and he's addressing him as general, and you can hear them talk. And when Curtis LeMay goes, you're in a pretty bad fix, talking about thermonuclear warheads off the coast of Florida. You can see LeMay's own psychosis because he goes, "You're in a pretty bad fix, Mr. President." And JFK goes, "What did you say?" And he goes, "You're in a pretty bad fix." And he goes, "You're there with me." And
Right.
I think not only did JFK see that these guys were willing to just bulldoze into Cuba, they didn't
Right.
care if we lost 50 million. They were like acceptable losses. Right. Which who knows?
Right.
Let's maybe open our own hearts and go, yeah, Curtis LeMay was also the head of the Air Force and led bomber squadrons over Tokyo. He probably looked at it as like anything goes. It's war. He's probably carrying his own trauma there. I mean, I don't even know if is he a bad guy. And then we find out 40 years later that like they did have operational nukes on Cuba. And not only that, they had permission from the Soviets for Cuban field officers to use them without even consulting with the Soviets. So it would have been World War III. So not only did JFK see that these guys were bulldogs chomping at the bit to go to war with Cuba, and it's not even that they were delusional and thought there'd be no pushback. They were like 50 million dead. That's a bargain. And he was like, so one, he goes, oh, they're willing to do it. Two, it's not that they're unaware that there's going to be U.S. deaths. They know and they're okay with it. You go,
Right.
oh shit. And then three, he's looking at Curtis LeMay, and Curtis goes, "You're in a bad fix." And he's looking at him, and he's going, "You're going to be there." And then he might have this moment of pure fear, and he goes, "Oh, they're insane." Right?
Right. That's what I
Right?
think. He's like, these guys are insane.
That's like learning Santa's not real, number one. And then you go and talk to your parents, and they also know he's not real, and you go, "Oh shit." And then you sit down with your dad, and you realize that your dad actually thinks Santa's real. And then you go, oh my God." So he saw all this and was like, then you have to start wondering, like, is this a test for me as a human? Like, is this all a simulation? I'm at the head of the Oval Office, and everyone around me wants to pit us in a world war. Like, is this a test of my own character? Yeah, I don't.
Right. And he had character. And
Yeah.
that's one thing. He might have had some flaws, but he had courage, he had character, and yeah, and he was willing to put it on the line, right? To make sure 50 million people didn't die.
And he
It was
and he
yeah.
did, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He didn't give in. He didn't give in. He didn't even give in really when you think about the Bay of Pigs, because
Turned
they
down the
wanted
bombers.
they were going to force Kennedy. They thought they'd force him to bring in the planes to help with air support,
They
and he
framed it
didn't.
that way on
And they
purpose.
framed it that way to make him look bad. And then he fired Dulles and the other dude who was way up in the CIA. And again, these guys were just the golden eggs, the golden gooses of Cold Warriors. You didn't touch these guys. No one touched these guys. And Kennedy fired them. And he was looking to get rid of um, J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI. He was too old. He's like, he's been there too long. He has too much power. He wanted him gone. And he was right to think that. So Hoover was more than happy to help with the cover up. He made a lot of enemies, and these enemies were like, maybe say, well, I didn't know about any conspiracy to kill him, but they certainly helped with the cover up. They had
They
no
certainly
problem
didn't
helping with the
look
cover
twice
up.
into it. Yeah, no, they
No,
they might have not had anything to do with it. I'm willing to concede that. But they certainly weren't staying after and burning the midnight oil. They're like,
no,
they might have even said, "Oh, that's too bad that Jack died."
right.
Anyway, and just
Anyway, right. Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
coffee's fresh.
Coffee and
Listen,
donuts in
man.
the break room.
Yeah. Did you ever? I don't know. You're older than me. How old are you?
I'm 57.
Oh, okay. You look young for your age. I'm 32. I don't know why I thought you were a couple years older than me. So this whole point's fucked, but whatever. In the 90s, there were these things that I'd watch on with my brothers on Nickelodeon. And it's where like you would get like 3 minutes in a Toys R Us with a shopping cart, and you can go take as much as you want. And it's just these kids, and they'd run around and they go get like $1,000 of toys. It was the greatest thing ever. I used to fantasize about this. And you had 3 minutes, and you always knew what you want. You go to the Legos, go get the remote control car. You get the most expensive stuff. You almost think that like around Bay of Pigs, Kennedy realized like, oh, there's a timer. They are at best not letting me back in office. At worst, blowing my brains out. You got to think. So he's just like, you know what? Not only are we going to end the Cold War and help the Soviets go to the moon, J. Edgar, you're out of here. Dulles
Yeah,
Brothers, you're out of here. He just kept looking
right.
up at the timer, like the shot clock, and he was like, I got a little more time.
Yeah,
The very word
exactly. Right.
secrecy is repugnant. And he's just going out there. He's just saying all. I mean, what was his like last bill? Was like, let's have silver-backed currency. I mean, the last guy to try to end the bank, Andrew Jackson, they tried to kill him twice. You got to think at a certain point he was like, oh, the sun's setting. I'm just going for it all. I'm surprised he didn't come out and say, by the way, there's a UFO out in Nevada. Like, it kind of
He
seems
might
like
as well have it.
he might
He
as
might as well
well.
have
That
at
might
that
have been
point
his
because,
speech for November 23rd. Who knows?
but that's just it, man. I mean, that's what people need to realize. They need to realize that this was happening, and this
Yeah.
is why the people who killed him killed him.
Hmm.
And then the other part of that is you have to realize why Oswald didn't. And I think that's another. I learned more about Oswald doing this book than I did just about anything else. And I was really surprised. I always did. I always thought at the very least he never acted alone.
Sure.
I knew that he was set up some way. now I'm convinced, and I'll tell people this, and I'm comfortable telling people this. He didn't pick up a gun that day. He might have picked up the gun after, when he went to his boarding house and he packed the gun because he knew that he was set up. He knew that there
Called
was
his
a
Army
problem.
intelligence handler, phone number memorized. That's a normal
Right.
thing, right?
Meet me at the theater, goes to the theater, and then 10 minutes later there's 150 Dallas police there.
Didn't they have like
So
the arrest warrant ready? They just had to fill
yeah,
in his name.
yeah,
That's
front
interesting.
page. Right, exactly. Right.
Hmm.
It's just too easy. But when you realize, and again, that's another travesty. That's a personal one. That's one that, when you look at it, it's like, he had two small daughters, a wife, obviously, Marina, and two
Marina
small daughters. And those daughters are still alive, and they've had to live their whole lives with this, just,
changed their name. Yeah.
yeah, this dark legacy, this terrible legacy of our father killed the president. And the fact of the matter is, I'm not 100% certain, but I'm 95% certain that Oswald, I honestly believe that Oswald was trying to stop it. And there are a lot of people that believe that. And there's a lot of evidence that suggests this. But we'll never get those documents that say Oswald,
Yeah.
he was a CIA operative. He was part of the false defector program,
Yeah. Under
right?
O and I.
That was a
Yeah.
false defector program. I mean, that was all part of. He was a spy. It was about spycraft for Oswald. Oswald was an operative, and he was a good one. Oswald was smart. He spoke fluent Russian. All Oswald did his whole life was read books.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a smart dude, and he was also a caring dude. I mean, people don't realize this about him, and that's one thing I hope that comes across in the book with some of the people I interviewed, is that they get to know Oswald a little bit more as a human being, and not just as either a patsy or a lone gunman, but as a human being who was ultimately manipulated and never got his day in court. Never, and that's a travesty, and that's one of the many ripple effects, right? We talk about, well, what does it mean to the country? Sure. What does it mean to Oswald and Oswald's family, right? What does it mean to the other people who were mysteriously killed, and anyone else who was affected? Jackie, I mean, just the whole Kennedy family. So it's, yeah, man. I mean, listen, it's so much fun because this is one of those topics you can talk about forever.
Yeah.
And when you get two people really digging in and talking some cool stuff about it, it's just, there's so much to discuss. And I know that there's people out there that are going to be like, well, I still believe Oswald did it alone and the Warren Commission was correct. Well, you know what? Great. I'm glad you think that. Please do more research. I beg those people. I plead with those people. Do more research. Do your due diligence. Be a critical thinker. Because if you are, you will realize very quickly that it was a conspiracy.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. I mean, that's why I wrote the book, man. That's why I did it.
There's a quote about, I think, 9/11, and it's like, do you believe in a 9/11 conspiracy? And it's no. And it's like, no, you have to. It was either a conspiracy between 19 hijackers or between the intelligence. It was a conspiracy. Period. Right?
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. When you put it that way. Yeah.
It was a, yeah. So I'm I don't think, I think the farthest I'm willing to go is say that Oswald did not act alone. I don't know if he picked up a gun or not. Again, that's something, obviously they did like the nitrogen tests or whatever, and there's no gun. So that's kind of a smoking gun, no pun intended, that he didn't do it. At the very least, I don't think it was only him. I think he could have very well simply been a patsy. I think I'm also willing to go as far as, I guess I have like percentage answers. I would say I'm willing to believe that he didn't even touch a gun. Like I'm willing to, like, I can entertain that idea. I think I'm very certain that he didn't act alone. I think there are probably multiple gun teams.
Right.
Certainly compartmentalizations inside compartmentalizations.
Right.
At the bar none, the fact that Jack Ruby just killed him. I mean, that's, you don't need any documents. You don't need to look at it at all. You just go, oh, they're shutting up. Right. You could have been born, put into a stasis, and woken up at age 32 and don't even know what that flag stands for. You don't even know what a flag is. and just, you know, given a rudimentary understanding of how human life works, and then shown this, and you go, ah, was that a mob hit? Did they who they did they take somebody out? He was about to, you know, testify against
Right.
the mob boss. Well, no, the US president. Oh, so he probably what if there was just no bias, you'd go, oh,
Right.
he killed the guy. Hey, Mr. Carrigan, why, you know, you pulled over? What'd you put in your glove compartment? Nothing. Is it alcohol? Is it a gun? Is this not your car? I didn't do anything. You know, dad comes home. Hey, how you doing? I didn't take your beer. Did you take my beer? I was just asking how you, right? So at the very least, it's that I don't, before we wrap this up, and I know I've kept you 30 minutes longer than I said I would because I can't be trusted. But now that we've kind of got out of the way, all the, you know, it definitely, I think we both in agreement. It wasn't just Oswald going, hey, screw this guy. And there's compartmentalizations within compartmentalizations. And there are a lot of people that didn't know, probably just involved in the cover up. They probably don't want to know because they probably like their wife and kids. All that being said, who do you think actually called for it? How many people do you think actually? I think it was LeMay and the Dulles brothers. I think it was probably like 3 people, maybe Angleton. I think like yeah, maybe 3 or 4 people. I think they sat down and yeah, they learned from the Nazis who they were friends with. They went, hey, don't put this shit in a memo. So many of the Nazis were caught like burning papers. They're like, hey, I'm talking to my buddy Klaus over here. Klaus is like, don't write it down. Just do it. Just kill it. Like they were like, don't put in a memo. It's spoken word only, right? The smartest guy I've ever met is a guy that's friends with in high school and college. He's a doctor now. He's a genius. And I remember he was like, I want to get to the bottom of JFK. And I was like, I feel like if anyone could, it was you. And he read like 90 books in like a semester while prepping for the MCAT because he's just that guy.
Oh my God.
He's just
Wow.
that guy. Yeah. He studied for the MCAT for 3 weeks and scored higher than I did. I studied for 9 months. Fuck that guy. Beautiful wife. Just fuck that guy. Right. But I remember he finally came back to me and he goes, we'll never find a smoking gun. Whatever was, and I think his exact quote was, we were like smoking pot one day, and he was like, I don't even want to name because he's like, I don't know who they would be. But I think someone met with someone else on like a snowy field at 6 a.m. and just said, like, it's a go. He's like, we're never going to find a piece of paper. And
Right.
so with that, acknowledging we're never going to find it, and we are just in the realm of pure speculation now. My thesis is Angleton, Dulles Brothers, LeMay, those four. And it was just rings of plausible deniability. That's who I think. I'm curious. What's your if
Yeah.
you got to take the
Yeah.
50-foot
Right.
3-point shot at the buzzer. What's your
Yeah. I avoid that in the book for
yeah
obvious
yeah
reasons, but like, yeah, I do like to talk about it. So yeah, I tend to think that's very close. I think you have Dulles, you have LeMay. I think you might have a guy like a Clint Murchison, someone in the Texas oil, one of those big
okay
shots. Uh, and I think, but someone, and this is where someone said to me, okay, but who did they answer to? And I'm like, what do you mean? They were very powerful people. He goes, yeah, but who did they answer to?
yeah
And this is a guy, he's in the book. He does a tour in New Orleans, an Oswald tour, and he knew the mob. There's a lot that happened in New Orleans, and there's a lot of clues there. And he said, think about it. Who
yeah
would
who
they
do
have
they
answered
answer
to? And I
to?
said, well, I don't know. I was hemming and hawing. He goes, Rockefeller.
Yeah
And I'm
okay
like, whoa. And he's like, think about it, read about it, do your own research. Who did Allen Dulles, Curtis LeMay,
yeah because they
John
were
Foster Dulles, who did they all answer to? Because they were put in those positions. There was someone who was pulling those strings. And he goes back to the elite of the elite, American families that go way back and literally have all the power in the world.
yeah they probably
So I would say you are correct that maybe someone like a Rockefeller gave a nod, right? Maybe
yeah
he didn't even say anything. Maybe he just gave a nod.
didn't say no
Right. And then they knew in that snowy field in the middle of nowhere. This guy's got to go. It's on. And they knew how to do it because they were practicing that to do for Castro. So the CIA already had the modus operandi down. They knew how to do something like this. They were really good at it.
And
they were going to hire, they were going to hire Corsican mobsters and U.S. mobsters. They were going to hire the hitmen.
Gun teams, yeah.
Right. Plausible deniability. No one's ever going to know anything. And then, by the way, Johnson's going to put me, Alan Dulles, on the Warren Commission. We control the paper. So don't worry about it. And they did it. They did it. And they forever changed this country for the worse.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And that's like one of the sexiest parts of conspiracies is like there's always just one level higher. And it's like, yeah, who did they answer to? And you're correct. It's like the Dulles brothers, LeMay, Angleton, maybe Hoover. Yep. They were like the top dogs, but they were like the top dogs of what we know. They were the coach. But it's like, who's the team owner?
Right. Who's behind this? Who's pulling the strings behind the scenes?
I tend to go back to the business plot. I think it was 1933 when they tried to get Smedley. That's only 30 years removed. I'm 32. 30 years is not a long time. 30 years ago, we were what? Going in Iraq, Desert Storm. That's not a long time. They had tried to do it with Smedley.
Right.
The problem was they went to a hero. And I think they put it in a memo. And then
he smoked them out. He smoked them out.
Yeah. And then the Nazis came back and they were like, don't fucking write their shit down, you idiots. Don't write it down. It's just I think it's probably the people who wanted to do it with Smedley. And they did it 30 years later. These guys you don't get to that position by, being spineless and backing down.
No.
These guys are they double down. They triple down.
Yeah.
Didn't work. Wait 30 years. Maneuver. Wait for the landscape to change.
It's a far right fascist mentality. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean today it's Republican Democrat. I tell people that has nothing to do with it. Party politics has nothing to do with what happened to Kennedy. This was a far right fascist conspiracy with extremely powerful people. And they could do it. They could do it and get away with it, which 60 years later, there might be 57% of Americans who don't believe that Oswald acted alone and believe there was a conspiracy, but no one's ever been convicted. No one's ever paid for it. And as a country, man, I'm telling you, there's a dark cloud over this country that's been hanging over it since 1963.
Yeah. I think that's when I think there had been false flags before it. I think Smedley got a glimpse of them. I think that's when they took the bite of the apple and they got it. And maybe I think, 2000, like hanging Chad's Florida election, I think that was them maintaining it. I think 01 was solidifying it. And I think we're just seeing the ripples and repercussions of it is a fascist dictatorship hiding behind the flag and the cross with a multi-trillion-dollar defense machine. And every action we see now is that 08 financial crisis, the fucking I don't think Trump or Obama ever had I don't even throw them under the bus. I used to, but I've ascended the idea of like this dichotomy. I'm like, yeah, Trump's a brash billionaire asshole. I think he's probably just a dude. I think Obama's just a dude. I think they both went in there with their ideas.
And then
they were as helpless as you and I. They got in there and they're like, I'm as Bill Hicks says, you win the election, you do your inauguration, the ticker tape parade, and then they bring you to a dark room, the 12 industrialist assholes that got you in there, and they show you an angle of Kennedy's assassination that is not just Bruder film. It looks strangely like it's from the grassy knoll. And then the projector rolls back up, the lights come on, and they take a puff of their cigar and they go, any questions? And you go, what's my agenda?
Yeah, exactly. What was my campaign policies? I can't remember them all.
Was it hope and change? Was it make America great again? Yeah, no. Listen, we're going back to Iraq.
I'll say this one last thing because this is huge. And I've been telling everyone this because I saw this and I hope you did. And if not, try to find it. Obama wins. George W is sitting president. So that, they have that transition meeting. Yeah. So the kind of meeting you just mentioned, Okay. They go behind closed doors. Who knows who's behind there? I saw this. I was, they say, oh, they're in the transition meeting. Obama goes in full of vigor and, this young dude.
Comes out with
I'm
gray
telling
hair.
you, he came out shaken hell. And no kidding, he had more gray hair than when he went in. I don't know what they did to this guy or what they showed him, but he was terrified and shaken to the core. I remember telling my wife, I'm like, what just happened to him?
They probably show
Well,
you a
they
picture of your,
showed him the Kennedy.
or they show you a picture of your kids with crosshairs on them.
Right. Yep.
And then to extend, I guess, humanity to an Obama or a Trump or a Biden, you and I can sit here on a podcast and be very free to talk about this because they don't care enough to kill us.
Right.
What happens toe to toe right now? Someone comes in here with a picture of my parents with a crosshair on them, and they say delete the episode. How quickly am I going? Yeah, I don't even know who's Roth. Never heard of him. Right? We like to think that we're these heroes.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary. And even if you don't care about your life, I mean, we all have family, right? I have a son, I have a wife. I mean, someone you care about.
Then you go, yeah, fuck, whatever. And they go, we've done this to every president before you. And you go, this is evil, but I mean, what do I care? They probably
I'll play the game.
They go, grow old. You're gonna get a bullshit speaking. Go give a couple speeches after you retire.
Yep.
We'll launder you a couple $100 million.
Yep.
Get your man, and you probably just go, yeah. What am I?
Yeah. Show up at events, certain events.
Yeah. Because it's not even like, it's not even like you have an option of like, do this, or you can go, or I'll get killed and I'll change everything. No. By the way, if you get killed, nothing will happen, but you're also just going to get killed.
Right. Which is, I think, what Kennedy was wrong about. I think Kennedy thought, well, if they kill me, everyone remember, because I do believe he thought that if they kill me, everyone will know.
I think it comes back. I think it comes back to this: is did he? I'm not even trying to be funny. Did he drop acid? Did he have a mind? I did psychedelics not long after my brother died, and it changed my life irreversibly. Did he have some experience that was like this world is just a phase of, you're an old soul and you've lived a million lives and you'll live, and if you've ever done acid, I mean, you come out of it and you go, oh, I'm just on this realm for a little while. He might have come out of there and gone, dude, okay, like
listen, I know
Jesus knowing he's being betrayed. Like,
listen, I know you're just saying, listen, there's a chapter in the book, Peter Janney, right? All right, Mary's Mosaic.
Yes, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Mary Pinchot Meyer. There's a good chance if it wasn't LSD, it was that psilocybin.
Yeah, I'm
being dead changed. Yeah, and it changed his perception, and Mary kind of helped him to see things a little differently and really fight for world peace, to the point where he's like, it doesn't matter anymore. I have to do this.
That's where I'm going from, is like, just like we're never going to find a memo, but even if you don't find a memo, you can still kind of see where all the signs are pointing. At a certain point, you got to go, this guy's not stupid. I would argue that we maybe can't even say that he didn't think he was going to be killed, because he's getting reports from the CIA about all these world leaders were killing, and it's plausibly denied. He's seeing the machinery, right? He's seeing the equivalent of the Zapruder film. What would make you not do that? A psychedelic, otherworldly experience where you understand that you're getting old, you're gonna die one day or another. And not only that, I mean, talk about a bad acid trip, going, oh my God, there's gonna be thermonuclear Armageddon, and I can maybe stop it. To me, that's like the Deus Ex Machina. That is the psychedelic explanation. I don't know what else could do it. These psychedelics can, as the comedian Duncan Trussell said, acid so strong it can turn the preppy captain of the cheerleader squad to an emo overnight. Like we don't know that. It might have done, like,
yeah,
I don't know. I have no idea.
That's a great take, because I honestly believe he did do it.
Yeah.
And I think it did change him. I really believe that.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's like money laundering or embezzlement. Like when you realize like the books are cooked, and then it's like, oh, and they're like selling chrome Lamborghinis. You're like, I don't have the paper trail, but like, That's the money laundering. Nothing else really make because he's not a stupid guy. He is privy to this. They come to him with Operation Northwoods like a year prior, and he's like, "No, what? No." What
Right.
else could explain? Like he knew they were gonna whack him, and I think he probably just had an experience and was like this is my destiny. Who knows? And was like, whatever. Which is just
Yeah.
kind of hardcore. If he knew he was going into it, didn't know when, it was just like do it. And
Yeah.
it kind of worked because it's been 60 years and we're still talking about it. They can't quite snuff out all the flames.
They can't. Nope.
Yeah. So
And yet, yep.
I was gonna
Good
say, well,
stuff.
I've kept you 37 minutes longer than I said I would again because I cannot be trusted. I work for the CIA. But Mr. Roth, thank you so much for coming on here, man. I'd love to have you on again sometime. I know I told you beforehand I wouldn't swear, but obviously I get excited. We start talking about Kennedy and aliens and psychedelics, and the governor just comes off and it goes off the rails. So I apologize for that. But
I had a couple myself, so
yeah, just like Kennedy and his indiscretions. Sorry, we're human. We're talking about the president getting shot in the head.
yeah, it
Don't
was
get
heated. It
mad that
was
we dropped.
real.
Yeah, don't get mad that we
Yeah.
dropped an F-bomb. Right?
Right.
What?
Right.
Shut up. Shut up. You said bullshit halfway through. We're talking about Kennedy's head getting blown apart in the street in Dallas because he dared to tell the truth. But you said ass. You know what? Go back to bed. You're right. It was Lee Harvey. He acted alone. Santa's coming on the 25th. Be good. Like, whatever. This is what, every once in a while, my questions, it just answer themselves. Why am I banned from YouTube? And I just kind of like listen to myself talk. And I'm like, that's why. That's why. All right. Well, Mr. Roth, thank you so much, man. Guys, I'll put the link of the book in the description. And if you could just in our email thread, just anything else you want, like social media, websites, anything, just copy paste it and I'll put it right in the description.
Great.
All right.
Perfect.
Thank you so
I had
much.
fun, man. This
Yeah,
was great.
this was a blast. I think we should do it again. We'll try to get even more unhinged. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I had a blast. These are my
Awesome.
favorite
Yeah.
episodes. Kennedy,
Awesome,
UFOs,
man.
psychedelics, Marilyn Monroe, Curtis LeMay. We checked all the boxes. Checked all
Just about. Just
yeah, we,
about.
we checked them all. We didn't bring up the moon landing. I mean, that's a really about as well, that's yeah. But we
I think that's
nine out
it,
of
though.
10. Nine
Yeah.
out of 10. I'll mail your report. 9 out of 10. We hit it all. We didn't go near Area 51, so I'll give you an 8 out of 10. But it's pretty good.
We'll
Pretty
do
good.
UFOs next time. We could talk about the documentaries. That's all about that. So that's a cool conversation too.
Well, there it is. That's our next one. All right, brother. Thank you so much. I'll send you an email. We will schedule an I'll email you right now just so I don't forget. We'll schedule another one. Please, if you could, like right now, just in the email, whatever links you want in there, I'll copy paste it, put it right in the description. Otherwise, it's gonna go one ear at the other.
Yeah. I'll do that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you so much, guys. Go grab the book. It's a great read. Get it on Kindle. I don't think it's on Audible. Is it on Audible? I think it's on Kindle. Is it
It's
just
Kindle, not audio yet.
You should get it on audio. Audio's good. But yeah, it's a good read. It's clearly it spawned this conversation. You might be listening to this conversation and saying, I want nothing to do with that. In which case, don't. I don't know. Go watch the Teletubbies. But if you want to have your brain melted, go read the book. Mr. Roth, thank you so much, sir. Everybody, God bless. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, dude. Thanks for being on here.